Hey everyone, I'm Fox with FoxeoGames, and this is Prey for the PC. I originally had no intent of purchasing this game, but after hearing some of the opinions others had of it, I picked it up for full price off of Steam. Prey has been compared to Half-Life, BioShock, System Shock, even Deus Ex. But are any of these comparisons valid? Well, let's find out. First up is the PC port. Prey doesn't have all the options a PC gaming nerd would like, but it's got enough. There are a handful of gameplay options that you may want to tweak to your liking, although I left them all at default. It's nice that you can enable or disable camera bob, as that's an effect many people have a passionate opinion about. You can rebind all of the keys, although some keys have double functionality that you won't realize until it's too late. I rebound one of the use keys to E, instead of having to reach across another key for the default key, which I hate doing, but later found out that E was a critical key used during the space sections for tilting yourself to the right. By the time I realized it, I had already used that key for so long that I was used to it and didn't want to go back to any other key setup. You can invert the Y-axis on the mouse, although only crazy people would actually do that. I did not test out the controller at all, so I can't comment on it, but it does appear that you cannot rebind the buttons. In the basic video options, you can choose between full screen windowed and borderless full screen, I love seeing that, as well as resolution and VSync. You can select a preset quality setting or go into the advanced tab, where you'll find a good handful of options with various levels, including anti-aliasing, anisotropic filtering, object/shadow/texture quality, and screen space reflections. I've heard turning this last effect down helps with performance quite a lot. I ran the game at 1920 by 1080 with settings maxed out and VSync turned off, and I saw frame rates stay fairly close to my 144 frames per second max. I'm maxed at 144 because I'm running an NVIDIA G-Sync monitor, which basically syncs the graphics card's output to the monitor's refresh rate, to put it in the most simplistic terms. The game would occasionally dip into the lower 100s, but remained solid throughout, except that is for one particular area of the game, where I saw my 144 frames per second drop to the lower 20s. Yeah, this one spot in the game is a real frame rate killer. I experienced a total of 1 crash to desktop, encountered 2 audio bugs where a sound effect kept looping inappropriately, and experienced 1 glitch where a container's contents got stuck on the screen for a while despite leaving the container area. Other than these issues, everything ran just fine and smooth as butter. Overall, a slick, competent PC port that could be improved with a few more graphics options. Onto the graphics and art style, Prey has a unique theme and look throughout. Just like the last 2 Deus Ex games have their own sort of thematic aesthetic, so too does Prey, though I'd be hard-pressed to explain it succinctly. I can't quite put my finger on it, but the game just has a consistent look and feel throughout. Something about the art, the lighting, the texture work, the whatever. Do I like it? Yeah, I do. It's thematically sound and consistent with the rest of the game, so it works. Texture quality is excellent at the highest settings, the only one I played it at, and rarely did I see anything that stood out as lackluster. There were a few instances where certain textures inside other objects lacked detail, but you probably won't notice unless you're really looking for it, which is how I noticed it in the first place. I was looking for it. Lighting is excellent throughout, except for the use of the flashlight. It's a very hard light source that creates a jarringly rectangular light shape. It does seem to make it harder to see the edges of the screen outside of the flashlight's luminescence, which is actually realistic when you're using a flashlight in real life, but makes it less useful for that. This is a case where realism doesn't make the game better. Special effects and particles are awesome, and this includes electricity, fire, and these special alien powers. Unfortunately, Prey suffers from an issue I've noticed where games as of late tend to have lots of special effects and particles dominate the screen and make it difficult to see what's going on and or to determine what exactly is hitting you. Cool looking effects quickly become frustrating when they obscure your view of the action and obstruct your ability to avoid and deal damage. The anti-aliasing must have been pretty good in the game because I never once noticed any jagged edges. I wasn't particularly looking for them, but they never stood out to me. On the art aesthetic side of things, Prey delivers. Like most games of this type, you do start to notice the repeating items and textures as you near the end of the game, but not any more than usual for this genre. One of the most breathtaking moments of the entire game was when you got your first look of the outside of the station, and then more so when you actually got outside of the station yourself to move around in your spacesuit. I have to comment on how awesome this segment felt. I just really Really enjoyed the outer space sections. They aren't entirely realistic though. You can increase your speed by holding shift as a sort of boost, but upon releasing shift, you immediately begin to slow back down to a set speed, and obviously that's not how space works. It is really cool that you can move forward, backward, side to side, up, down, and rotate right and left. I think it's called rotate, where you spin or turn in that direction. It's hard to explain. If you look at this, you'll see what I mean. Each time you make such a move, you hear your suit propulsion system, which actually does feel realistic. I mean, after all, in space, to shift direction, you'd have to produce some kind of propulsion. The character models for the aliens are pretty cool and unique looking, although there aren't as many as I'd hoped for. By the end of the game, you will feel like you've killed the same aliens over and over and over, and that's because you have. Aliens are easy to model in that they don't have to conform to any set standards. Humans, on the other hand, are different. Price human character models aren't generally terrible, but a few of them are outright ugly, and they all seem to have this awkward kind of forward-leaning lurch to their stature. This woman in particular is pretty jarring to look at. I think I audibly gasped in horror when she turned to look at me when I was standing real up close to her. The design of the station's interior has just enough detail to be believable. There's a cafeteria, crew quarters, a fitness area, a kitchen, a greenhouse, a reactor room, medical bays, science and research areas, executive offices, and there's even connecting large-scale duct-like tunnels that you can travel through. We'll talk more about this later, but everything does have a very solid and consistent art direction. Sound effects and music in the game are both excellent. The entire game is pretty loud overall, but I generally found the sound effects to come through at an appropriate volume. I actually appreciated that dialogue from characters wouldn't instantly fade or shift right to left speaker as you move around, making it easier to hear them talking. I enjoyed the sounds of fire, electricity, the special alien powers, and even the creepy sounds that the aliens made. All were masterfully engineered and implemented. And the music complemented them all very well most of the time. There were a couple songs that stood out as really different from the rest, such as the song that plays when you're on the helicopter at the very beginning of the game. But generally, the atmospheric tunes were notably subtle or creepy at the appropriate times. Most of the songs will not be gracing your music player outside of the game, but that's okay because that's not my standard for first-person shooter music. On the story end of things, Prey definitely delivers once again. Not everyone is going to like the slightly ambiguous nature of the game's endings, but there is definitely plenty of story here. I didn't read and listen to all of the dialogue in the game, but I found it to be mostly pretty good. There are a few awkward phrases people use, as if they're trying to be crude for edginess sake, but the dialogue and voice work is solid. I never thought anyone's voice work was bad, and that is my standard for video game voiceovers. I will complain though that the computerized voices in the game could sometimes be a bit overbearing and sounded a bit forced. The game's story and presentation gripped me and kept me interested until the very end. It starts out strong, has several key sections of story in the middle to bring up the usual mid-story lull, and then ends strong as well. I completed the game through 3 different methods, I guess you could call it, though it appears that there are really only 2 main story endings. Correct me if I'm wrong. I won't get into details, but decisions you make throughout the game will have some impact on the ending. I was mostly satisfied, but also left wanting to know more, which I think was very much the intention of the developers. And now for the meat of the game, the gameplay. Yes, Prey is a first-person shooter, but not like Doom or Call of Duty. As mentioned, you can't aim down sights, and ammo is fairly limited. If you spam attacks with your guns, you will run out of ammunition pretty quickly, as well as probably die. You're intended to approach combat in the game more tactically, akin to the Deus Ex series of games. You have a goo gun, which shoots gobs of goo that have various uses even outside of combat. You can slow or even immobilize enemies with the goo, then finish them off with another weapon, or you can use it to seal leaks, or you could use it to create platforms for jumping up to reach higher areas. You can upgrade your character using in-game items called neuromods, which you can find or even manufacture throughout the game. How you upgrade your character will determine how you approach combat. Or how you approach combat will determine how you upgrade your character. I mean, either way, you can buff up your health and gun damage, upgrading weapons to their max with special weaponsmith upgrades, or you can focus on stealth and speedy movement to get around enemies. I found it far more useful to concentrate on upgrading in such a way where I focused on killing enemies, as that way you can collect all the items that they have. In iconic Half-Life fashion, the game starts you out with a wrench as a blunt weapon. Yes, you can even upgrade yourself to make the wrench more effective in combat. How you play is up to you, as there are various paths to take, both figuratively in the upgrading and literally in how you move around. Making your way through each area, they initially appear far simpler in structure than they really are. With study, you'll find that there are plenty of secrets and pathways that are not immediately apparent. I've returned to areas I previously explored multiple times, only to find something I had missed that passed several times through. And yes, on that subject, you do backtrack in this game. There are various ways to do it, some faster than others, but do expect to travel through some of the same areas repeatedly. Enemies may spawn differently based on where you are in the story, so completed areas won't necessarily be clear of enemies just because you killed them all earlier. There are main story quests to follow, sometimes branching off depending on which objectives you choose to complete. You will be forced to make decisions at times, and you can't have it all in Prey. You will sometimes have to choose either A or B, but not both. There are tons of side quests to pursue, which will reward you with various items, weapons, and neuromod upgrades. Eventually, you'll get a scope that you can use to scan the alien creatures, and the more you scan them, the more upgrade paths you unlock for unique alien powers. These powers include a psycho shockwave, telepathy, and the ability to transform into inanimate objects to hide yourself. Oh, and did I mention that the base enemy in the game is a mimic, a creature that hides by disguising itself as an innocuous, inanimate object? Yes, you may find that the trash can is actually a mimic waiting to crawl onto your face like one of those face huggers from the Alien movie series. You can get the ability to use your scope to scan for these hidden dangers, which I found kind of fun at times, searching a room to see if anything is a mimic in disguise. The aliens obviously get bigger and more powerful as you go along, but I won't spoil it all for you. I only ever used the mouse and keyboard since that is objectively a superior way to play if you can handle it. I'll have no comment on gamepad controls. Sorry about that, guys. I usually try to experiment a little, but this time I just went straight all mouse and keyboard. I will say that while a few methods of interaction felt awkward at first, I quickly got used to them. When using the computers in the game, you move your mouse to position your reticle over an element on the screen, then press F to interact. No, you don't press F to pay respects. You press F to interact. Sorry, little joke there. Meme. I frequently found myself instinctively clicking the left mouse button by mistake, which initiated my attack, which often wasted a bullet from my gun. Thankfully, the computers in the game were indestructible and I didn't actually destroy them. The same is true for using the keypads, although the nice thing here is that you can use your numeric number pad on the keyboard to enter the numbers, avoiding the clunky mouse plus F key input method. Now, this may be me more than the game itself, but I often found myself hitting the wrong keys during intense combat segments. I should have made better use of the tab button to swap between two weapons, but instead I frantically tried to hit the number hotkeys for my weapons, often missing and hitting the wrong one. You can use the weapon wheel to select a weapon as well, but that's such a gamepad focus technique that I only ever did it by mistake when I accidentally hit the scroll button. I really miss the lack of iron sights or aiming down sights. I often hit the right mouse button out of habit and ended up using my alien power that was mapped to that button. No, the right mouse button doesn't aim down your sights, and it took me a long time to finally develop the muscle memory to stop trying to do that. And I love, and I repeat, love games that use this grid-based inventory system. I don't know why, but I'm a real sucker for it. If you're going to limit the amount of stuff I can carry, this is how to do it, people. Why do I like it so much? I don't know. Maybe it's because it's like a game of Tetris to maximize your storage. Although I did find it frustrating that the sorting option just sorts your current items only. All new items you pick up are once again haphazardly placed in the inventory, requiring that you resort them constantly. I would have appreciated an auto sort that stays sorted. Also, some items you pick up do not automatically stack with others of the same type unless you auto sort or manually stack them, and that was just frustrating. So what's my final verdict? Well, I really liked Prey. The levels have a depth uncommon to most first-person shooters. Not only is there verticality to the station in addition to the horizontal element that most games focus on, but the way in which rooms interconnect is extensive. While some paths require certain abilities to open, there are generally multiple ways to get around. The guts, as it's known, or the interconnecting tunnels running throughout the station, make an easy way to get around, as does exiting the station and traveling in open space to your next target airlock. The map shows how various areas interconnect, and the maps for each area have multi-layered levels for ease of viewing. The upgrading system was fun and kept me wondering where I should invest my points. I never felt like I was totally wasting any of my neuromods, though it's always true that with games like these, some upgrades are just more useful than others. There are lots of options, and the options really expand when you get the alien power upgrade paths. I generally felt like I was both getting better at the game and becoming more powerful through upgrades. The implementation of the recyclers was an ingenious idea. Being able to turn virtually any item into usable materials means that even junk items have value. Banana peels and burnt circuit boards? Pick them up. A gun that you already have 2 of? Pick them up and recycle them. You can use even those base materials to make very useful items such as medkits, ammunition, throwable weapons, and even neuromods for upgrades. Now, a minor complaint I have is in the potential for the game to get the social justice inclusion criticism. While I didn't listen to and read all the dialogue in the game, the only relationship dialogue that I can remember seeing or hearing anywhere in the game involved 2 women. So it's hard to deny that it must have been an intentional effort to shoehorn that lesbian relationship into the game so that we can appease the social justice crowd. After all, how do you explain the fact that there are all these other characters and none of the rest of them seem to be involved in a relationship that I'm aware of? Maybe I missed it, but, social justice is social cancer. Overall, the story was gripping and intriguing, the graphics and art direction were excellent, the music was solid, and the gameplay was fun and engaging. I bought Prey at the full price, and I don't regret doing so. I marathon played Prey at times for up to 5 hours and enjoyed almost every minute of it. After all, no game's perfect. I can't think of many significant complaints to offer, and that's saying a lot for me. As you guys are well aware, I have a way of criticizing games even many others think are amazing. I highly recommend Prey, even at the full price of $60, but what about you? Have you played Prey? And if so, what did you think of it? Let me know in the comments section below. I'm Fox with FoxeoGames, and I'll see you next time.